So the dimensional layers, we hear a lot about moving from 4D into 5D. Third dimension is where we are now, where most people are. And there's a separation, there's a time lag between what we're thinking and feeling and when it becomes this outer reality. We are creating this outer reality with every thought and feeling, every breath and heartbeat. But because there's this time lag, it doesn't seem like it, you can disassociate from it, and it creates difficulties. In 4D, whatever we're thinking and feeling instantaneously becomes the outer reality. Whatever is inside instantaneously becomes outside. There's no time lag whatsoever. Um,
In terms of
so,
physics, we're literally talking about higher voltages, if you want, or frequencies of of higher resonance. I guess it's the right
mhm,
or faster fractalization, where, as you said, the time lag between thought and
manifestation.
physicalization, shall we say,
Yeah.
physicalization,
Mhm.
uh, are compacted. But the only way that could happen is faster, right?
Right.
Or if the energy input is higher or faster, I assume.
Yes, you got it. Exactly. So that is the scientific way of looking at it. And from what, Drunvalo is very, very scientific. He says that there's going to be a shift in our bodies. As we are, our bodies are a combination of matter and energy, but they're much more dense, more matter than energy. So for instance, he mentions that here it's like 90% matter and 10% energy. When we move to 4D, our bodies are going to switch. Are going to be much more energy. It's going to be about 90% energy and about 10% matter. So we are going to be physical still. And even when we do get to 4D, there's an element of duality, because the first thing that usually happens when we get to 4D is we meet our parents, kind of like when we came in here. So there's going to be mommy and daddy and us and them as well. But it's vastly different than where we are now. And it is a state of unity consciousness that we know in our hearts, but we haven't generally had much experience with. Just for about 13,000 years or so, we've been in this duality stuff. So that's three and third dimension and fourth dimension. Fifth dimension is formlessness, and we can we can imagine what it's like, but we can just barely imagine it.
So it's
It's
just pure
so,
energy.
yeah. And it's very difficult to put into words, so
Right.
I usually just don't even talk about that.
Hence
We
the
live on,
hence the problem with people experiencing it. It's like
yes.
it's not in the paradigm of a sensory perception, and hence nobody kind of understands it. Could we
Right.
equate it to something like astral travel, or I don't know, I mean, like mental projection or something? Is there any form of experiential connection that we can have as humans to it?
Yes. In fact, to quote Rumi again, he talks about how he worships at all the altars. It doesn't matter if it's Buddhist or Jewish or Muslim or Hindu or whatever, that he's just breath. So ultimately, that's what we are, is breath. We're moving through these bodies, but
Prana.
you know, we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, we're not our bodies, though we have them and they are ours, they're our possessions, quote unquote. But there's the Vichara Atman, is the one of the Hindu ways of doing this, saying I'm not my body, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, etc. The other way is to say Tatwamasi, which is I am all of this. I am, Brahma. I am the salt shaker and the pepper shaker. I am the drunk and the addict, as well as the godly person, all that stuff. So there's these two ways, and they get you to the same place, but they're opposite methods. One of them is cutting away, one of them is adding. Both of those will get you basically to this place of oneness, which is what we're talking about with 4D and 5D and further. There's 144,000 dimensional levels, from my understanding. And we live on each one of them. We're already there. We already live on these levels. In fact, it's your higher dimensional selves, your higher selves, your fourth dimensional and higher selves who are probably orchestrating your third dimensional being here and your daily events and your awakening and the awakening of those around you or lack of awakening, because that is part of the whole deal. So that's my understanding of the dimensions. And again, we're right at the bottom of the barrel of self-aware consciousness here. Even though there's a level of consciousness and a grid around the planet that is quote unquote lower than us on third dimensional level, what we have here is 44 plus 2 chromosomes in 3D. And there are people and a grid of consciousness on this planet that have 42 plus 2 chromosomes. These are the Aboriginals in Australia, certain tribes in Africa, and I think maybe the Hopi tribe, though they're probably disconnected from that now. But they are also in a state of unity consciousness. The dream time is what the Aborigines call it, for instance. We are, even though we were higher, quote unquote, we have 2 more chromosomes. We are in a disharmonic state of consciousness where it's 3D and we disassociate what we're thinking and feeling from the actual manifestation of it. When we achieve 2 more chromosomes and we get to 46 plus 2 chromosomes, that's unity consciousness, where we're heading to. And this place where we're heading to is, it's what we used to call heaven. It's where we used to go when we died, or the start of it, at least the first level. And from my point of view, heaven is lowering its vibration. Mother Earth is raising her vibration. This is a scientific thing, the Schumann resonance, and there's scientific basis for Mother Earth is raising her frequency, and we're kind of meeting in the middle. We're kind of bringing Earth, what we used to call heaven, to Earth. And what did you call physicalizing that?
Yeah, physicalization, if you want.
Yeah, physicalization, spiritualization of matter and materializing spirit.
Yeah, I appreciate talking with you. You have a clear understand. You sound like you have a clear understanding of physics and science, and I think, and I say this because there's a need right now for the two communities to meet, a desperate
Yes.
need to bridge the gap between academia and sciences, as well as the, let's call it 69 spiritual, religious, woo woo, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, side
Mhm.
of things, where academia is just narrow minded, stuck into a paradigm that is becoming a dogma of science.
Right.
And I mean, I have so many PhD friends whose head is so narrow, it's ridiculous. They cannot open up to alternatives. Like, it's incredible how someone so smart cannot even conceive of something outside of what he studied.
Yes,
I
exactly.
mean,
Right.
it's painful sometimes to speak to extremely intelligent people because they've become so entrenched in their science or what they believe is the truth, which
Hmm.
is their science,
Yeah.
um, that anything that it's out of those boundaries is bullshit. They'll call you they'll just say it in your face. You're stupid. And this is bullshit.
Right.
And
This touches on what you were talking about earlier of belief structures. I actually had a student a couple workshops ago point out that belief structures BS. It is bullshit.
Oh, nice, BS.
Yeah, right?
Belief structures. Yeah, nice one. I've never noticed that. Yeah,
Don't tell a scientist that,
yeah.
Don't
That's
throw them on the defensive and throw away everything that they know.
yeah. It's interesting, and many of them are coming out delicately and slowly.
Mhm.
The various Lipton and
Yes.
Dispenser,
Mhm.
um, uh,
Greg Braden.
Great Britain, thank you, and so
Mhm.
many. And oh my God, Rupert Sheldrake, absolute
Yes.
giant,
Yes.
undiscovered, unmarketed giant. I mean, his
Mhm.
work is paramount. The man is going to be remembered as the
Right.
father of telepathy and paranormal psychology. He's
Mhm.
gonna be like a giant in the future, and there's no doubt in my mind.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yep.
and I want to quote. I've quoted him in previous interviews, but I want to recommend again people to go to his book, the sense of being stared at. Rupert Sheldrake, the sense of being stared at. An unbelievable, amazing layout, scientific, experimental, lab-based uh, research on telepathy and everyday experiences that people have, like the sense of being stared at, or knowing
Wow.
when someone who's on the phone before you pick up, or
Mhm.
receiving a message on text or WhatsApp, whatever, but
Yes.
someone is mom is calling you or girlfriend is calling you before you receive the message.
Yes.
Fascinating phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this leads into your questions about the psychic phenomena and the different experiences that we have with the Merkaba.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes much more sense nowadays. We're putting it into terms of I don't know if we call it voltage, because I don't know if we can measure it, but I mean, I know we can measure it in terms of electromagnetics and in terms of the pulses within our nervous system. Probably what you're mentioning as an increase in genetic count justifies that increase in electromagnetics or voltage, and that justifies itself into entering this new structural vibrational pattern,
Yes.
if you want, where the frequency is higher, and hence the body needs to adapt, and hence the mind needs to adapt, and hence higher capacity to create straight from the mind.
Yes.
I
As
mean,
all these latent possibilities come online.
and there's a straight line between them. It's understandable in these terms. Whether it's justifiable and experimental, it's another story. But we can understand it. At least we can put 1 plus 1. And now, in light of what Drunvalo and others are talking, it literally looks like a puzzle. And we just need to.
Exactly. Yes. Drunvalo is really, really good at giving us the nuts and bolts and the pieces and letting you put things together.
Right.
And from what I understand, this is how he wrote the Flower of Life books. The first volume is meant to break down your view of the reality and show you maybe it's not how you thought it was. And then the second one gives you the nuts and the bolts and the pieces to put together a new picture of the reality,
Yeah.
which is again vastly different, much more operable, much easier. It's manifesting our dreams. It's what we've known in our hearts all along, but we've had very difficult time manifesting or physicalizing, as you say.
Yeah. Exactly. And I know, everybody talking about right now the um, law of attraction and
Mhm.
the laws of intention, or what you want, you set it out, and it has to be. There's a
Yes.
process of dualization, though, when you set your intention. You set what you want, but being uh, a dualistic approach, you might also be afraid of exactly the opposite. You want a lot of money, but you're either afraid of losing it, or you're afraid that people are going to come and ask you for money. There's always that polarity side, what you
Mhm.
want and exactly the opposite of what you want, or somehow a fear-based belief or thought related to what you want. And
Yes.
my experience with the Merkaba and the tiny space of the heart has been very much I don't want to say monorail or monodirectional, but there's like that thread in between the plus and the minus, the black and the white, the polarity. That's the
Hmm.
third one that you mentioned.
Yes.
That that I don't know how even to explain it, but like it's a win-win.
Hmm.
If you
Yes.
thread that tiny, tiny, subtle line, because the mind is not used to, it just knows the opposites, right? It does.
Right.
It needs to be trained to see in the middle, and that is, in my opinion, has been a process of intuition and that comes through the heart, or through inspiration, intuition. I don't even know how to describe it differently,
Hmm.
but like there is, as you said, a space between the plus and the minus, and if you thread that line, you don't need to worry, and you don't need to even set an intention. You just have to believe that what you want is going to manifest one way or the
Yes.
other. Um,
Yes.
and said that way, it's even more naive than I thought I would say.
Well,
Um,
you're right on though. The brain is a polarized instrument. It's so polarized. If you take it out of the skull and set it on a table, you have to hold the pieces together or it'll fall apart.
yeah, two-piece.
So when we create through our brain as an instrument, it will create duality. It has to, because that's what it is. It's a polarized instrument. So there's a different way to create, and that's through our heart, which is a win-win situation for everybody. It only knows unity. It doesn't know this corridor of opposites, this mirrored hall that the brain is. So the brain literally is getting retrained, getting almost unlearning, so to speak. The heart has an electromagnetic field that's 3,000 times stronger than the brain, except the brain still thinks it's driving. It really thinks that it's in charge and it's in control of things and it's got a really good picture. And I mean, 3,000 times stronger. That's a huge joke on the brain, but that's the human condition. So because it's a reasonable object, it needs reasons to let go and say, oh, right, yeah, the heart's driving. So what I've seen with myself and others is that we create these experiences, being in love versus fear. We understand that the outer reality will respond to us in this loving state. And at some point, the brain starts to let go. It starts to realize that it really can't apprehend, let alone comprehend what's really happening, the reality behind the appearances. The heart gets it. It fully, like you were mentioning, the intuition, our essence knows that. Our essence, depending on what traditions, it's pretty much anchored in the heart. Almost all the traditions talk about this. So looking from our soul or our essence or from our heart, all of these bring us a place of unity, perspective, where it is a win-win situation for everybody. You want everybody to be fed. You want everybody to, go to heaven. It's not just 144,000 chosen people that get to go to heaven. Everybody gets to go. That's where the heart's coming from.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very interesting. Do you think that at some point our brain was one bulk, and then in evolution it's separated, or are we going into a united brain?
From what I understand, we have three brains, actually. It looks like one, but there's three parts to it. And I think Bruce Lipton backs me up on this. Mr. Gurdjieff talks about this
Absolutely,
quite
yeah.
a bit.
It's even more. I mean, in neuroscience, there's multiple. But yeah,
Yeah.
reptilian, and then the right, left, and
Mammalian,
right, and
the,
then the front. But
yep,
do you think
neocortex.
that the corpus callus, the big, is that the right name? The big
Yeah,
cut,
connecting. Mhm.
the big empty space between the two lobes.
Yep.
Um, will that ever be gapped? Is that where we're going? Is that where
Yes,
the higher abilities are going to come around?
certainly. This is the corpus callosum is the connective tissue between the two hemispheres. And that's another aspect of Drunvalo's first two volumes is meant to bring both of the hemispheres together. Because with our right brain, we have this intuition, that there's oneness that moves through all life. There's one spirit that moves through everything. We can kind of intuit that. We go, okay, yeah. The left brain goes, no way, honey. What are you talking about? There's me and him and over this and that and all the separation. So what Drunvalo did with the Flower of Life books, which is that pattern behind me there, is showing to especially the left brain I've heard him say he proves it with a watertight case that could be proved in a court of law that there is one spirit that moves through all of creation, proving it to our left brain so it can calm down and start talking to the right brain, get this whole thing going together. And then this becomes a marvelous instrument to use rather than an obstacle to our development and life.
Yeah, I agree. I hear you. And it's also fascinating how when the two are in coherence, and I don't know how it clicks, but there is a point beyond meditation. I mean, in meditation, it's visible. You start seeing lights inside. The darkness is not dark anymore. The
Yes.
process become real when the two are in coherence. But there's a state of coherence also when you are in active mode with open eyes, walking around, driving.
Mm-hmm.
And I can recognize it because there's a element of unity between the breath brings unity between the brain and the heart, and the two are kind of resonating. There's definitely a vibration in my chest,
Yes.
and that is usually in sync with what the brain is going on, or like I will feel a dissonance in the form of a needling, like a needle, it's like a puncture in the chest
Mhm.
area when the mind is generating thoughts that are um,
Yeah,
of
incoherent.
divergent nature, of a destructive nature or divergent nature,
Yes.
and on the opposite side, the frequency and the vibration of the heart can bring the mind back into concentration. Or
Mhm.
so that I've noticed this dynamics as I'm in everyday activities. The fascinating thing is interactions with interaction. So we're on the pillars of relationships.
Yes.
And so external attention is external, and I'm paying, I'm projecting my attentions onto another being, just like it's happening between the two of us right now.
Mhm.
And that at that moment, there's like fascinating phenomena of resonance that is manifest in words. It's as if my experience and your experience can be can be met. Uh,
Yes. I fully agree.
and projected at the same time, like when I'm projecting my experience to you, like where you describing to me before about um, the dimensions, and I could grasp what you were saying, not just because you were using metaphors, but also because there was a sense of resonance and tuning. I
Mhm.
guess I
Yes.
don't really have a clear question. I was going with free flow with these statements, but it's fascinating how the state of unity and coherence between the brain and the mind that the Merkaba practice brings about can be taken in everyday activity.
Yes. I can actually talk to this a little bit.
Please.
Uh, I've had experience with this personally, but I've also seen it coming through two very different teachers of mine. One of them is my ninjutsu teacher, and of course, he's coming from a martial arts background, but also my Kriya Yoga teacher, who does not do anything with martial arts whatsoever. Totally different. But they talk about this unitive movement where um, the there's one stimulus and one response, and it's a unitive movement where the I, me isn't getting in the way. There's an appropriate response to whatever is being experienced, because there's no identification. Um, there's only presence. There's not an identification. So in that, this is kind of backed up by science. They're finding this out that uh, before, like when we were in our mother's womb, when mitosis begins and the one cell goes to 2 to 8 to 4 to 8 to 16, etc., there's a point in there where you're nothing but a heart, and the whole thing starts beating, and you're at this point in your mother's womb, you're only a heart. You're just this, science calls it a blastoma, but it's basically just a tiny little heart. And they found that that heart has neurons in it. It actually has a primary brain. So it has intelligence, but it's before this one. What the first part of tissue that comes out of that blastoma of the heart is the tip of the tongue. And then the heart gets tucked into the ribs, the limbs come out radially, the head then comes out, and then we grow the brain. So way before in our development, everybody was nothing but a heart, and way before we got this thing up here. That's part of our commonality as human beings. Everybody had that experience in their mother's womb. Now that we pop out of the womb and we come into this outer reality, everybody's putting emphasis on this, and the learning that you get at school and the numbers of letters behind your name and the degrees and all that sort of stuff. And they're not paying attention to, again, the primary intelligence of the heart. I'm saying that because it was first. The heart is what created, from my point of view, this outer reality. It's what created and allowed this whole brain thing complex of separation to exist. So, again, the dimensional change, it's just moving back from here to here, from our head to our hearts. When we fell, whether you want to see it as the fall in the Bible from Eden or the fall from Atlantis, at some point we were in a very high state of unity consciousness, which was in our hearts. And then we fell, we forgot how to die consciously, we forgot how to leave our bodies consciously, and we forgot that there's all one, and we had this whole experience of duality. We literally fell up to here and created an ego. And we've been in this state for about, from my point of view, again, 13,000 years. So it's a long-standing habit, and it's taking a bit to undo that. But this is the process. This is what I keep calling the work. And first three chakra stuff, allowing the brain to let go and let the heart drive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for that. Um, I'm gonna go into the naughty questions.
All right, yay.
So, have you met any of the inner Earth and hollow Earth inhabitants and plasma beings that Drunvalo mentions? And if so, and if you did, please tell us about them.
Okay, yes, I have met some. Uh, my very first workshop, I was guided and led to take the whole group down into the inner earth, and we had an experience down there. I can tell you a personal experience. I can share that with everybody.
So these previous, forgive me, before you go into that, I want to clarify, this previous experience was a meditation experience.
Yes,
It wasn't
uh,
physical. It wasn't with your body.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, and this one I'm about to tell you um, was meditational and confirmed.
Okay.
So I have a very strong doubt mechanism. My middle name
No
is
judgment
Thomas.
attached. I just want to clarify.
Gotcha. I appreciate it too. Um, so this one day I was bopping around actually in this room. This is my yoga room, and I was putting away some books or something, messing with some stuff on some shelves, and I kind of blinked, and it was like an extra long blink, and I noticed in my inner field there's like all these stars going by. It was like I was moving through space, and it got my attention. So I like blinked again and like held it a little bit longer, and all these stars are moving by, and I'm like, okay, somebody wants to show me something. So I stopped what I was doing and I just went and sat down. And as I sat there, my guides are telling me, and they're saying just to drop down into the earth, feel your connection with Mother Earth. And I felt my connection with Mother Earth, and I felt my body drop away, and it's someplace up there, and I'm heading straight to her core. And I meet these two uh, large beings of light. They have somewhat humanoid form, but they're really just light. And they were interterrestrials, and they were showing me how they live in crystals, how they create crystals, quartz type crystals, and they enter into it as a whole world and live in there, and check it out and make it their reality, and then they come back out, and they do this all the time, and they've got all these different worlds, and this is how they've been living for about the last million years or so inside the earth. And they instruct me to go standing in front of this one. It's a big giant cluster of crystals, and they say, look at this one crystal. And I look into this crystal, and they say, you see the light in there? Now go into the crystal. And with my consciousness, I moved into the crystal, and I saw the light, and I was moving towards the light. And as I got closer to the light, I realized that it was a star. It was our sun, but it was a different star system. And I can still hear them, hear their guidance. So they said, tune to that star and fly straight through the middle of it. And I did. And if you don't know, our stars are just as vast inside as they are outside, and um, they have a heart and a tiny space that is like a portal, and they're all connected, basically. So so they had me fly through the center of this one star, and it connected me to another star system. I did this 3 or 4 times, and then they they took me out of the galaxy, is the only way I can say it. As if this is the galactic plane. I kind of went up and out, and I traveled for a long time. I don't know, because there's no reference points, but they took me to the edge of the universe, basically the edge of the known universe, and showed me something there, and then took me on a return journey. And they brought me back, yeah, through those star portals again. And this time I flew out of our sun, our star out there, and came into our solar system and saw planet Earth below me, and kind of saw, okay, that's kind of where North Carolina is, and that's the mountains over there, and that's probably right about where I live. And they dropped me right back into my body. And I wondered, I'm sitting like in my room in meditation going, wow, I wonder if that was really real, or if I just made all that up. And I walk out of my room here, and the television was on in the next room. And it was probably like National Geographic or the Discovery Channel or something. Some program was on about space travel and how it is absolutely impossible to move faster than the speed of light. So them saying that in the next room was enough confirmation to me that that was absolutely real, and that I really had that experience. So if that wasn't enough, because my middle name's Thomas and I've got this strong doubting mechanism, I read an article from Drunvalo about 3 months later, where he mentions going into the earth, having this experience, and then being dropped back into his body from Father Sky. And his wife told him, oh yeah, that's an old meditation we used to do to help accelerate your evolution. So
Going to the into the
going
earth.
into the earth, yep, it's connecting as below, so above, as above, so
Right.
below.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Very, very interesting. And so that connects me to the next question. What can you tell us about the sun? Lots of theories about it. People claim there's a society, there's a culture living inside, of
Mhm.
beings of light that live inside the planet, the star, our sun,
Yes.
and they are also connected to other stars. And please.
Have you heard of Archangel Michael? Most folks have.
Yeah, certainly did.
Archangel Michael, many people know that he has legions of healing angels. Uh, I've also heard these legions of healing angels called the golden helmeted ones. And I've heard it said that the golden helmeted ones, now think about this, it's like a halo, basically. It got a golden halo. This is something that happens in the ATIH workshops as we light up our halos. These golden helmeted ones live in the sun. They are the inhabitants of the sun. What the Sufis say is that our sun is a being like Lady Gaia, except they call it Prince Haraksh, and it is an archangel. Our sun is an archangel. Why wouldn't an archangel live in the sun and with his other angels as well? So I have had experience of this. I do know that our star is directly linked to Sirius A of the Sirius star system. And literally, if you fly through the center of our star, you will fly out of the center of Sirius A in 90 seconds. It takes that, well, a little bit longer than that. But um, from my point of view, and again, this might be a little far out for some folks, the dolphins and whales come from Sirius, and they move back and forth from here, this planet, and their planet, which is the third planet out from Sirius B, at the rate of 100,000 to 200,000 a day. They're going back and forth between these two planets. So again, from my point of view, dolphins are higher beings than us. They're in a state of unity consciousness already. They have bigger brains than us. They have parts of their brains that we don't have, and we don't even know what it does because we don't have it. We do know that they achieved this state of consciousness that we're in long time ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago in their evolution. And they used to walk on the land like we did. and they had this experience of duality and separation consciousness. And when they moved out of it, when they graduated, they said, we're never going to do that again. And they affected their their evolution, so that every breath, if you look at a whale or a dolphin's body, a cetacean's body, they breathe through their head, and every breath moves over their pineal.
Oh,
So
indeed.
with every breath, they're not only receiving the light that comes from above with their pineal, that prana, but they're in unity consciousness with each breath. They never lost this connection.
That's a fascinating one.
So
Fascinating connection.
yeah, we're heading in that direction.
Are we gonna move our nose back of our skull?
Right.
That'd be funny. Um, so there is scientifically it has been claimed, and it's out in a lot of publications, that there is a threading electromagnetic channel, if you want, or tube that goes from one star to the other.
Mhm.
Some stars have multiple of these threads depending on its distance from the nearby stars,
Mhm.
and they are all somehow connected to each other's, just like a neural network on one level. It
Yes.
can be equated as an image, as a metaphor. They all pulse, maybe not with the same frequency, but at the same time. And
I think
the
what you're talking about is the Birkeland currents.
thank you.
Mhm.
And the fascinating question here is there a central star, or is there, is there a coordinating body, if you want, that then manages all the other nearby stars? This is an interesting question, and nobody talks about. Um, what do you think?
From my perspective, yes, there is. There is literally, just like we have hundreds of trillions of cells in our bodies, but there's one consciousness. There are hundreds of trillions of planets and stars and even galaxies. There's so many galaxies, and each galaxy is conscious. It's like a little spaceship, and it's got its own consciousness, and it's moving through time and space. And there is one consciousness that's moving through the entire universe. The uh, the Maya talk about something called the Hunab Ku. It actually is this symbol that I'm wearing, and they mention it as being the axis of the universe. Science is just now finding out that the speed of light is not constant and that it is variable. And they found that when the light is moving in parallel to this axis of the universe that science has found, that it travels at a different speed. I believe it moves faster. Well, that's great, but it's still not talking about the instantaneous communication that the mystics have always known about. So let's just come down and scale from the entire universe to our galaxy. And if you were on one side of the galaxy and if I were on the other side and I waved at you and said, "Hi, Gabe," it would take 200 million light years, for the light to get you to you, and then 200 million light years for your "Hi, Jason" to get back to me. It's way less than instantaneous. So what science is also just now breaking on their consciousness, dawning in their consciousness, is that these Birkeland currents that you're mentioning that connect all the star systems together, they're electrical currents, and they move through space way faster than the speed of light. The first calculations were 20 billion times faster than the speed of light. They're saying now it's trillions of times. So it's literally so quick, we can't differentiate the time between instantaneous. It might as well be instantaneous. And
Uh,
it's through these Birkeland currents.
uh, is that associated to the idea of the 0 point, where there's like this sea of energy that it's all encompassing and all touching, if you want, or only
Yes.
present throughout the universe or the galaxy, and that's what is local here is actually local out there, and
Yes,
hence the the Schrodinger challenge of you know um,
right. The, the light
entanglement,
and dark.
entanglement, and then duality particle.
Mhm.
It's all fascinating stuff. I mean, it still doesn't explain how on our plane here everything is so slow.
Right.
We just can't understand. I mean, like, we are making suppositions about the big, but here right now we are having problems about speed and movement of time and gravity. But maybe
Yes.
that's the answer. Gravity might be the answer. Um,
I have heard that gravity waves are, I've heard that the Russians, and they presented this in Germany, supposedly, this was around 2011, some scientific symposium. The Russians have created a computer that doesn't work on electricity, it works on gravity waves. And when you send an email, it doesn't go at the speed of light, it goes instantaneously. So, and again, this was supposed to be around in 2011. We haven't heard much of it, but that's not too surprising either. Uh, we're coming to realize that all of these inventions that we have, cell phones and computers and everything, are externalizations of our own innate powers and abilities. And what many of the prophecies say is that in one day, someday in the future, one day, everybody on the planet is going to realize, wow, I don't need to do this with, outside things. They're like crutches. We can do this from within. And we throw it all away and, unplug from all the cold fire power plants and all that stuff. And we start doing it from within ourselves. So that's going to be a big shift for Mother Earth. And again, this is supposedly something that we're going through collectively. I do see both the individual and the collective evolutions going on with this path.
Fascinating. Still on that line with the sun and the Berkeley currents and human evolution, as CMEs and solar flash.
Yes. I remember when we were in a training in Mexico for the teacher training here, and there was a big solar flare that happened. We were doing an exercise that all of us teachers had done probably several times before. We all knew how to do it. But even though there's 120 or 130 of us, we just couldn't get our stuff together. And Drunvalo was like probably the closest I've seen to him ever getting frustrated. He was, just like hanging out for about 15 or 20 minutes. And it's like, y'all get it together, you'll get it together. We didn't learn until several days later that right at that moment, a big solar flare was hitting the planet. And Drunvalo already had a program in his Merkaba to modulate that, to mitigate those sorts of energies. We weren't aware of that. So he's standing there, it's just like nothing's happening because he's already ready for it. Basically, his entire being is ready for it, and we're going like little kids because we're just when a solar flare hits the planet, it affects the electromagnetic field of Mother Earth, but it also affects our electromagnetic field because our brain is directly linked to her magnetic field. It has a magnetic sheath around it. So when a solar flare hits, it'll shift a magnetic line over 3 to 6 feet, and we get a little disoriented. And that's what was happening down there. Um, since then, we were watching the solar maximums around 2011 and 2012. These are 11-year cycles. And they were, many of the prophecies and many of the governments around the world were expecting huge solar flares, if not just one big one to wipe us all out at that time.
It actually
And
happened in 2012 during the summer of 2012, August or end of July. I can't End of August or end of July. At some point in the summer of 2012, there was this recorded the biggest ever recorded that for 1 hour or two almost hit Earth on head on. It just
right,
passed in between, either passed between the moon and the Earth, or like just
yeah, just scraped us.
scratched, yeah, the
Mhm.
surface. And uh, some scientists were saying that had that hit the planet, probably 2012 or 21st December 2012 would have been the end of society, because
Wow.
all of the electricity would be a massive burnout, no transportation, no communication. In 5 to 6 months, all the commodities and elemental
Hold
needs
on.
and will be wiped out, and disease and hospitalization will be not available, and by that time, 6 months later, society could have been
This
eliminated.
is news to me, Gabe, and I'm really glad that you're sharing this with me. This is very pertinent and meaningful to me personally. Um, I'll just share with you. I don't. I'd rather that this not be broadcast, but if you do, I'll trust you to use your discretion.
Sure.
Um, one person alone can change their reality, their Leonardo sphere, their Merkaba. You can change your world into whatever you want. You can't affect the consensus reality unless there's at least three people joined in a specific way. Uh, it's free will, and you can't change the collective unless you do it under certain laws. Um, so again, one of the things with the laws here, uh, the laws of 4D look like miracles in 3D. The laws of 5D would look like miracles in 4D. And for 3D, we would just be like, oh, we wouldn't hardly even get that. It would filter down here, but it would, anyhow. Um, in my workshop in May, at the end of May, I can tell you there was May 29th where we did this meditation. Uh, I knew that there was a solar flare coming from the sun. It was preparing, and three people joined in this meditation in a certain way. And Father Sun was asked uh, to listen to Mother Earth and to what was shown was a picture of a possible future 25 years from now, where the children that were children back then are now 25 years later, and this is the growth that will happen on planet Earth in the next little while if you listen, Father Son. And you can go back into. I look on the websites at Father Son often. There's a couple heliospheric observatories that we have out there, and you can, from the satellites, see Father Son and the surface. And the surface of Father Son, the dark spots, which are usually where the CMEs come from, this dark spot turned into, it looked to me either like a womb, like a woman's yoni, or an ear, both of which are receptive organs. And uh, from my perspective, something shifted, and Father Sky started listening and being receptive to Mother Earth at that time. That was in May of that year. And, again, May 29th. We had a workshop over the Memorial Day weekend, we call it here in the United States. So I thought at that time, I thought and felt that something shifted, but now you're confirming it all these years later that something really did. There was a very close shave that happened.
Yeah, that is actually recorded in the NASA in the
In their files.
NASA public record. You can go and see it in the summer of 2012. There was, I cannot describe the location because I cannot read outside of the latitudes outside of the planet.
Right,
That's why I couldn't describe precisely whether it was between the moon and the Earth or way above
right.
in open space. But it literally missed. They clearly stated it missed the planet by a few hours, just
Right.
like a scratch of an air.
That's wild.
Yeah,
I thought that it just hadn't happened. So
like
it did
everybody,
happen.
like everybody. Yeah, we were expecting it on the 21st December 2012. And
Right. Wow.
um, I'm gonna jump to another one, unless you want to add something
No,
else.
no, that's fine.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, this is one of the tricky ones that I have been researching most of my life, and I find um, very intriguing. So, is the tunnel of light during the process of dying a trap? And are we recycled back into Earth through the Earth atmosphere and then into the moon and back to the Earth atmosphere into a new body? And if so, who's doing that? If you, I mean, like it's a hypothesis, hypothetical question. And if not, what is their natural process?
All righty. Yeah, I love these multi-layered questions.
I'm
I'll
gonna
see if
be,
I can,
yeah.
yeah, get to all of it. Um, from my understanding of the Merkaba, when people are having that experience of the lighted tunnel at death, uh, I'm assuming that you know a little bit about the Merkaba. We have a breathing tube that runs through the center of our body. It's the axis of the Merkaba. From my perspective, what they're experiencing is the breathing tube. That tunnel of light is the breathing tube. And when somebody dies, they're what that is they're moving their consciousness either to one pole or the other. Most people usually come out of their heads, but the other option is to come out of your feet. I've heard that happen also. Uh,
Out of
when
your
you're conscious,
eyes, out of your,
what?
also in the Indian tradition, a high spirit will come out of his eyes or his
Yeah,
mouth. A very
yes,
low spirit, a very low consciousness will come out of his anus.
right on. Okay. So moving to the polarities is death. And you can do it one of two ways. You can either go up or down. Um, and it's the lighted tunnel seems to me to be that moving into the breathing tube and either going up or down, whichever direction. The I guess the direction, and I think this has to do with the rest of your question also, has to do with the development of the soul. And even though a soul might quote unquote go down in consciousness, that feels like heaven to them because that's where they belong. That's where they're at. That's, probably where their family members are or some relations, but that's going to feel like home or heaven to them. Um, Not everybody is conscious enough to ascend. That's not what everybody's doing here. From my perspective, we have three different ways of leaving the planet nowadays, three choices. And we can either die like we have been, which I'll talk a little bit more about this one too, because it's more about your questions you're asking about the moon and the recycling and stuff. Or we can resurrect like Jesus did, and he was a master of that. And by the way, he wasn't the only one who did that. People resurrect in the East all the time. I'm sure you've heard of Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. His guru resurrected. He died in the 1920s, and he resurrected not only to Yogananda but also to other disciples at the exact same time, on the exact same day, in the flesh. And that wasn't more than it was about 100 years ago. It wasn't 2,000 years ago. Only that guy over there can do that. We do that. So we can die like we have been for 13,000 years, which is largely unconsciously. We could resurrect, which again, Jesus was a master of, and he showed us how to do that. Or we can ascend. With the ascension, you there's a death process, but you walk through with your body. You walk through with your body. You're taking it with you. The difference between ascension and resurrection is the body dies, and on the other side, you remember your body, reform the light body, and that's how resurrection works. So that's that major difference. There is a death process with ascension, but you're walking through it with your body, with your eyes open.
And you drop off the body, recreate it on the outside, suppose.
Yes, pretty much. That's that transformation from energy into matter, and every single one of those, all three of those choices goes to the same place. It's just the amount of time that it takes, or the experience of time.
I mean, this is a question I want to share with you my opinion on the subject, because death is one of those belief systems that no one comes back to talk about, isn't it?
Right,
And those that do are the ones that in later years have shared this idea of the tunnel, and then being met with family and friends, and then having to come back even though it felt amazing and you didn't want to come out, so
right,
on and so forth. And so there is a paradigm, there has been some form of a paradigm shift with these, with the belief system of the church, for example, that you go either to hell or to paradise or to purgatory, where, you know, very few, only saints would go to heaven, and the
right,
really evil ones will go to hell. And so this would actually generate an expectation in the mind of the individual that believes himself to be of one category or the other. But now we have this new paradigm where there's like it literally is a new belief system where everybody goes to the tunnel, because
right,
the scientists have put people under hypnosis, and during hypnosis, or people that have come out of um, um, pre-death experiences,
mhm,
have a multiplicity of them have declared, I came out of the body, and then the light came, and I went through the tunnel, and I found my family in Jesus, and so on.
same experience. Yes,
Right? So repetitive experience spoken about from individuals that came back or they were under hypnosis creates a belief system, a dogma, if you want, or
yes, yes,
and then that's what everybody expects. Which on one level it's good, because
right.
somehow everybody has their own expectation or belief of what's happening after. The
Mhm.
real question is not only what is after, but exactly how do we intentionally decide? Where's free will in the death process? And I
Uh-huh.
like what you said about the three modalities:
Mhm.
resurrection, ascension, and just death.
Good. Yep. Yeah. Um, yeah, they all end up in the same place. From what I understand, what you're saying is exactly correct. It's our subconscious reflexes that turn the experience into I'm going to heaven, or I'm meeting Jesus, or my angels, or that personification, so to speak, and that anthropomorphizing as well. There's only one reality, but there's all these different ways of interpreting it. And it's not like one's good or bad, or closer to the truth or anything like that.
Or we can say there's one reality for each individual that perceives it.
Well, yeah, that's what Muhammad said. There's each soul has its own path to God. I think Buddha said something similar, or yeah, they're all saying the same thing basically. Everybody has that within them. And before we came in here, when we were all one, we said we were all God. We were all the same being. We said, do all possibilities. Try out everything. Try out all the little nooks and crannies of this whole creation thing. I know it's going to hurt. It's going to feel like suffering at some points, but try it all. Just do all possibilities. So, from my perspective, that's part of what we're doing. And that kind of bleeds into your question about soul and soulless people and all that stuff, too. There is an amount of free will. And because you're a yogi, you probably understand this, that they say that you won't come to yoga unless you've done it in a past life, unless you've had samskaras from another life. That's, I'm sure, why I took to it in this lifetime, why I was like, shaking my parents and my friends and brother and everybody and saying, yoga's great. I'm feeling the benefits. You can too. And they're like, whatever, Jason. It was my path, not necessarily theirs. So there's free will, yes, and there's these predilections and sort of prefigurings from past lives, you might want to call it, or planes that we descended in to get here, is how the Sufis talk about it. Um, the Sufis aren't so sure about reincarnation like the Buddhists are, for instance. They see it a little different. They see us moving at least through the angelic planes and then to the jinn planes. The jinn are more like archetypes, and it's where we get our word genius from. It's much more mental, um, and intellectual and informative, and then down to this earth plane. And when we leave, we ascend through the same stages. So when people are dying, they move to the jinn realm and leave behind all their thoughts and all that stuff. And the people who are coming in go, oh, wow, it's some unfinished business. I can take that. I can, you didn't learn how to do this lesson. I'll go and that'll be part of my mission next time. So somebody might come in, for instance, thinking that they're a reincarnation of Mozart or Beethoven or whatever, when really they just met them on one of these other realms and they, exchanged some information, maybe some unfinished business or something. They might not be a reincarnation. This is how the Sufis see it, but there's a connection there because we're all connected. So it's, again, there's one reality, but there's all these different ways of interpreting it. So
Yeah, I mean that's the challenge of
yeah,
humanity, isn't it? You know, every there's never one truth, and
right.
it's all interpretations. There is to say, facts are undeniable.
Hmm.
Facts are facts. The moon is white. You may have, you might be blind-eyed, or you might be color blind, and you see
Right.
blue, but the fact that I mean, that doesn't actually justify the fact that it's just an interpretation. It's quantity of perceptions that define our truth or our facts right now as a humanity, and that's how the scientific process in academia works. There's a peer review. There's one scientist, they try one way and they say this is how it is, and I tried three
Right.
times and
Yeah.
repeat it. And so someone else engages with the process and they say, yeah, I found the same experience. Someone else in Russia, I found the same. China, same experience. And then we believe that to be the truth. It becomes our truth, our reality.
Right.
Indeed, can we distinguish that between a belief system and an interpretation? Is it factual just because a lot of other individuals have experienced it? What if some of those individuals find a new facet or an alternative or an exception to the rule?
Yes.
What happens in this? In the, it's like,
This is how we're breaking down the old belief structures, because we're seeing again that the structure maybe doesn't contain the whole, and that belief structure maybe is BS, and we start to look for alternatives, and the brain starts to let go and sees, oh wow, well that's true from that perspective, and this is true from this perspective. The Buddhists talk about two truths. There's absolute truth, which is what you were talking about, the real truth, truth with an absolute, it's a big T, great big T. And it doesn't change, and it always is, it always will be. And all experiences and words point to that, but can't contain it. So there's also relative truth, which is, it changes and grows with us. My truth when I was 3 years old was different from when I was 13 and different from when I was 30 and 35, and hopefully it'll keep growing and changing. It's getting closer and closer towards that absolute truth and the facts, once again, what is, and then there's all this interpretation of what is.
yeah, yeah. When we end up in philosophy here, with these kind of conversations, but it has, why I ask these questions is so that I can test someone's belief system and also personal experience, because that's what values what I value at this point. I can
Right.
shape my own perception and my experience according to what others.
Yes.
It's again
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not giving you answers. I'm giving you my perspective.
exactly.
And yes, it's my version of the truth, and it bounces off of your version of the truth. And yeah, it's
And
it's
someone
such
watching right now, they might be thinking, these two fuckers don't understand shit.
a right.
Exactly. I'm gonna ask you one last question. I actually ask you everything, but I want to ask you about soul. How do you define soul, the soul, the spirit, and consciousness? I mean, like, what is this deal? What is the deal about soul? Everybody talks in every religion. There's a definition of soul. No, there's no definition of soul. They speak about the soul, but nobody says what it is and how. Where is it found? What is it? Is it different from the mind? Is it consciousness? What is it? So wanted to just spin off in that direction as well.
Alrighty. Easiest way to approach this is to say what soul isn't first, and we can take a little trip with our consciousness. So when you wake up in the morning, you are aware that you've just woken up. You're aware that you're not asleep anymore. You might become aware of your body and the room around you. When your awareness moves out into the world, whether it's your body or the room around you, that's consciousness. The awareness is becoming conscious of an object. So that's what I call consciousness. Awareness is primary to consciousness. So consciousness is awareness of the creation. Soul is the bridge between the inner world and the outer world. And our inner world, once again, with our right brain, we intuit that there's one spirit. With our heart, we know that there's one life that moves through everything and it's breathing everything around us to the furthest galaxies. Our brain has a different perspective on things. The outer reality sometimes supports the oneness, but sometimes doesn't. The outer reality, to achieve in the outer reality, is exactly the opposite than achieving in the inner reality. So if we call the inner reality spirituality and the outer reality worldliness, we find that many people in the world will be either worldly or spiritually oriented, one or the other. A true balance is somebody that has a soul and is moving equally between both inner and outer worlds. This soul is, from my perspective and point of view, it's created through struggle and friction between the inner and outer worlds. Exactly as mommy and daddy came together and had a little friction and we were the product of that marriage, it's the exact same thing between the inner and outer worlds. And there has to be, again, free will, an inner volition, and a looking and a searching to understand this before you can even approach having a soul, really. Again, a lot of people feel that a soul is an innate, inborn quality. You know, even plants and animals have souls. I can see that as spirit, and I can see that they have an individuated soul as well. There's, you know, especially the animals that we bring in close to us, like dogs and cats, they have this inner and outer struggle, just like we do. And I can see that they develop in their own ways. I hesitate to say that people don't have souls, or, you know, plants and animals don't have souls either, but there's some quality of that is this, it's a product of this inner struggle that I don't know any other way to get it. And it's not that they don't have it, it's like they do have it, but we're kind of regaining it. It's kind of like that, you know, we're out of nature, we've been thrown out of the Eden, or, you know, fell from this level of consciousness. The plants didn't. They haven't forgotten. They don't need to go to the school of remembering to remember. Nor do the bunnies or the hawks or the snakes or, you know, the animals, the trees. They're in unity consciousness. So, you know, first off, they're not concerned whether they have a spirit or a soul or a body, even none of that stuff, because they're just in oneness. We're the ones that are doing all that stuff, usually from here. So I'm not sure, first off, of my perspectives, or that there's any validity to seeing things and breaking these things down. Rumi, to quote Rumi once again, he seems to be coming up often. he has a poem about body emerging from soul, soul emerging from body, and how you can't have one without the other. They're inseparable. They look like separate things because we're looking from here, but they're not. It's one thing.
Okay. I mean, again, very delicate question, very much based on belief system. I've stopped considering the subject simply because I don't experience a soul. I don't know what a soul is. I know what consciousness is. I know what awareness is. I know what mind is. And I know what intellect and individuality are. And if you tell me that the conglomeration of all these things, consciousness, individuality, mind, intellect, memory, mind, are the soul, I say, okay, we're on the same page. If you give me the dogmatic religious subject that, you know, some people, the religion stuff like the Christianity, you know, the soul goes here, the soul goes there. I really don't know what the heck they're talking about. I just don't have the experience of my soul going here or there, or my soul not being in my body. Um,
I think you hit a key word there, at least with Mr. Gurdjieff's stuff. Individuality and soul.
right.
That's,
They're the same thing, you know.
yeah,
It's what in the Indian tradition is called ahankara,
you're
or
right.
the
Yeah.
doity, the sense of I, the sense of individuality,
Mm-hmm.
um,
And
and the personality that goes around it, because every individuality has a different flavor.
yes.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I stopped thinking about soul, and I stopped talking about soul because it's very actually um, dystopian and actually confusing. It's very much, especially now in the age of neuroscience. Soul means everything and nothing. I rather talk about consciousness or um, body mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That act of letting that go is, to me, that's really important. That's your mind saying, I don't know, and I don't care to know. I'm not going to figure it out. Just let it go. There's other things to be concerned about.
right, exactly. That's
Uh,
exactly where I am. I leave it in the back burner, and it's something that I've contemplated a lot when I was studying in university. But I know I'm just poking you guys because I want to hear your opinion.
right on. Offer local classes here in the Asheville area, but I also travel all over the world. So any place that I'm invited, I'm happy to go to. I teach not only the ATI work, I do teach an advanced workshop which has to do with embodying these principles and living them out in life. How do we apply this to our lives? I also have crystal workshops that I work with, mainly the crystal world, but also other stones. And then I have a workshop that I work with specifically shungite, which is relatively new mineral that's coming out of Siberia and has, yes, very good remedies for all of us in these days and times that we're moving through. Um, let's see, I also do phone consultations. If you have questions, feel free to contact me at waterprana555@gmail.com or check out my website at waterprana.net. Either of those two ways you can get in touch with me. I do phone consultations, I do astrological readings, I do the teachings. Once again, that's probably the biggest part of what I'm doing here and why I'm here, is to facilitate these ATI teachings and how we make it real in our lives. So once again, thank you so much, Gabe. It's really an honor and a pleasure to meet you. And I
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. That's it for today, you guys. I'll see you in the next interview. Like and subscribe. Thanks again and take care. Peace out.
thank you. Bye.